Okay, so we are live, multiple locations, I think. Uh, yeah,
Cool, man. I'm glad we're here.
yeah, I am too.
I guess so for the audience, I'm Jonah. I'm a student in Garrett's Radical Undoing, and I'm part of his kind of weekly Sunday sessions. And kind of one of the reasons I wanted to kind of bring us together was to kind of extract some of the nuances or the nuggets of kind of what Radical Undoing is, maybe tie it into some of the concepts in Neo Reiki and breath work or therapy, and just kind of help people to dive deep into really what this work is and how it can help them. So I'm really glad we could do this, man. And let's
Yeah,
just
me too.
start off with there's probably a few people on here that have no idea what radical undoing is. So just in kind of maybe the most basic layman terms, what is radical undoing?
Yeah, man. Radical undoing is just a form of body movement and breathing um, designed to target and break apart chronic tensions in the gross and fine musculature of the body. So the big and small muscles, all the way, little tiny ones in the forehead, all the way to the giant ones in the legs and the hips and pelvis and all that. Uh, and in breaking those apart, it starts to clear out all the garbage that's going across the screen of the mind. One way I like to describe it is radical undoing gets you out of the hell of the mind and back into the world of actuality, the world of the body, where the senses and the body actually exist. And then from there, you're able to then differentiate between what's going on in your mind and what's going on in your body. Why would that be important? Well, because most suffering is taking place just on the screen of the mind and in reactions and interpretations to what's going on in the mind, as opposed to seeing and being present to the fact there's actually most of the time no survival threat on your life, although you will react as if there is to the contents of the mind. So radical undoing breaks the physical tensions apart in the body, which then starts to dissolve the interpretive layer that you're living in the mind. So you're seeing and experiencing reality more clearly, which then allows you to differentiate between the fiction flowing through the mind all day and then the actuality of what's really going on in your life.
I guess a good example of that is like someone that has a fear of dogs, right? So little Joey's walking across the street at 5 and gets bit, and his shoulders raise, right? So he forms that layer of tension, and every time he sees a dog, he goes into that same kind of contracted response, thinking that the dog 20 years later is the same dog that bit him at 5, and that filter of that memory or whatever's kind of stuck in there in his body and in the tensions is kind of clouding what's really going on, which is there's a dog that probably won't bite you, right? But you're thinking it's the dog from 20 years ago. So um, that's kind of the analogy I always like to give. Now, when it comes to this process of tension, Wilhelm Reich, the famous therapist in the 50s, coined it as muscular armoring or muscular bracing. So let's talk a little bit more about that, right? Our traumas, our emotions stuck, like for example, in the shoulder raise or in the tension in the face, or like what's in there, what is it, and then why would someone want to do this form of breath work to resolve it? What is that going to do for them?
Well, put it simply, that it's just muscle contractions. Just like when you go outside and maybe it's really cold outside, and if you're not paying attention, the shoulders will start to rise up against that. So something happens in life, you get upset. And there's nothing you can actually do about it. Most of the time, when you're a kid, you have to basically obey and go along with whatever crap the parents or the teachers or whoever are throwing at you. And then so the body reacts by tensing up against that, effectively forming what the Reich called armor. So, like wearing a suit of armor to protect you from the blows of life. The issue there is when that happens chronically over time and then becomes normalized in society over time, then people are unaware when they're actually tense and then they stay tense all the time. So why would someone want to not be tense? Why would someone want to break apart that tension? Number one, so you could feel fully alive again. So that you can handle the intensity of life without overreacting to it. So when you overreact to the things that are happening in life, which usually happens because you don't have natural breathing going on, meaning there's armoring or tension in the diaphragm and the muscles between the ribs, in the chest, in the throat, deep in the belly, and even in the back somewhat. When you're not breathing naturally, then you don't have a lot of extra space to draw more breath when you actually need it. So when a situation becomes more intense, for example, it'll just throw people into what's, I think, falsely labeled a panic attack. That's just a description of a physical event. It's not actually a medical issue. Most of the time, maybe there's some cases where it is, but we're talking about in general. A panic attack is just tension in the diaphragm, and it was already tense all the time, and then the person starts to trip out about something, and then the brain is reading the tension in the diaphragm. That's all it has to assess your state. It can't really assess what's going on outside of you except sounds and visuals and whatnot, but it's assessing the state of the body and deciding if there's an emergency. So in the example of a panic attack, there's a lack of breath happening, and tension in the diaphragm, so then the breathing gets more shallow. Then when the breath is shallow, the blood vessels constrict in the brain, and then it assumes from this state of the body that there must be an emergency. Because historically, that would only happen when there was actually a physical survival threat present, that type of breathing, that type of constriction. So now we're not dealing with those types of survival threats most of the time. But the body, when the diaphragm is tense and not undone, not relaxed, not working naturally, then we're responding to almost any stimuli or any heightened intensity in any life situation as if it's a survival threat. So the extrapolation of that would be the so-called panic attack, where people go to the hospital and demand some kind of intervention and usually get some kind of tranquilizer for that. And then the tranquilizer, of course, makes the muscles relax and the breathing start to happen naturally again. So it's not the tranquilizer that helps, but it's of course it does help in that situation, but it's unnecessary. So the undoing answer to the panic attack situation, you can preempt them from ever happening with this technique, or you can stop them in their tracks when they are happening, if you can do it or get the person to do it, which is the gag reflex. So you just, and it's, for some reason it's taboo to people. I just don't get why. I mean, maybe it's, I'm not going to speculate, but it's no big deal. Like, it's something that happens when you're brushing your teeth. It's something, it's no big deal, actually. And then you're not trying to throw up, but you're just trying to elicit the gag reflex. And I think I've demonstrated it on videos. I'll probably demonstrate it again on videos here during a stream sometime. It'd be great if we could find someone right at the beginning of a panic attack and then bring them on video and have them do it. I mean, that would be almost impossible because the person's tripping out so bad. But if I find someone, I would love to do that on live video. Like, it's like the internal Heimlich maneuver for panic attack instead of choking. Yeah.
But it really does kind of open the throat, open the diaphragm. There's that old adage, I'm sure you've heard it before, you don't know how stuck you've been until you've been set free. And that kind of goes back to a little bit what you're saying. Like, I mean, 90+% of the population is walking around with the shoulders up to the ears or chronically contracted, but we don't feel our body because society kind of pulls us in our head. We're not breathing properly. There's no life. This process it brings people back to life, right? Mm-hmm. It brings people back into the body. So let's talk about that more. Like, how does this process soften these tension patterns? How does it kind of anchor the mind or our consciousness back in the body? Is it purely through breathing? Is it breathing and different movements? Let's break it down for the viewer a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is the breathing and the different movements combined that affect the transition from having your identity lodged into thoughts, disembodied thoughts, and then relocating that identity on not so much on the body itself, that's problematic too, but on the observer, but to remember that you are the observer, observing life via the body currently. You have to know what is not going on. You have to see what I call the sewage or the mind vomit that is just layered on top of everything, including ideas about yourself, about other people, about the world, about existence. So the undoing, I say it again and again, it breaks these tension patterns down that were out of awareness. So let's even just do one right now that takes 1 minute. Let's do the shoulders now so we have an example, and
Sure.
people that are watching can actually experience an example so we don't stay in the mind. So you pull your shoulders up to your ears, you pull them up like this, and you just hold them up there. Don't just level them off or let them drop at all, but you want to continuously add pressure upward. And then at the same time, continue breathing and make sure the breath is going through the whole belly and chest. And your arms and hands can be relaxed, but the shoulders are just continuing to pull upward. Be aware if you start to tilt your neck back or something, just let it be looking straight ahead and relaxed. And then you want to relax into this intensity. So you just keep pushing the shoulders up the whole time and make sure you're breathing throughout the whole time. And we do this for a full minute, so we'll go another 30 seconds or 30 seconds or so here.
I remember the first time I did this, everything tensed up, and over time you do learn you can kind of isolate that tension and soften into that tension.
Yeah, there's a whole tension map the brain makes of the body. And so you're breaking that up, so then the brain has to actually remap the body, and it'll do so with a lower amount of tension each time that you do these exercises. Okay, so we've been about a minute. Pull the shoulders up nice and tight. Take a full inhalation, and I like to make a crazy face, at the end, like something like that. And hold everything, and then we count down and thrust the shoulders down with a louder ah sound. So it's like 3, 2, 1, and ah. And so you want to use a little bit of force going down. And with all these exercises, with any exercises you find on the internet, make sure you consult the authorities and make sure you have permission or whatever. Your life is in your hands. You take the risk. So if you have a shoulder injury, then don't hurt yourself, okay, with any of these exercises.
That was
so
great.
What we did.
A lot of presence that I think a lot of people report from doing it. And everyone that I know that have done shoulder exercises, they a lot of the time say, I'm more present, or there's a greater sense of presence because that tension softens. Explain a little bit more, like, you talked about you don't want, the ultimate goal is being able to observe. And it seems like the tensions keep us stuck in our mind. They keep us stuck in thought. We're not in our body, and there's no real objective observer, right? So we break down these tensions. Like right now, I notice a greater sense of stillness, awareness, presence. I can feel my body. I can feel the space around my body. And all I did was bring my shoulders up for a minute.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
explain that a little more.
Well, part of that is the cumulative effect, because you've been doing the sessions. So now your body, you basically have a pattern that you've established where your body is now giving itself permission to relax everything else that it relates to this body of work, So if you've done the face stretches, the shoulders, the flops, the lay down sessions, then every time you do this, the body's remembering what was going on, and it's finding a path from tense back to relaxed again. So you're doing that with all the different body movements throughout, with the whole repertoire of undoing exercises. Going from tense to relaxed. And awareness, mainly awareness, is what's going to bring the deep relaxation over time. Awareness, just awareness, because there's no way to just command yourself to relax. But if you bring awareness to tension that you have, it will relax on its own.
Okay. So if we kind of tie this in a little bit, because you've taken Dr. Hyatt's work, and I know kind of what you've done, and you've added to it, right? And for those of you that don't know, and Garrett, you can elaborate more, but Dr. Hyatt, at least in my eyes, took kind of this style or form of neo-Reichian breath work that he learned from Dr. Rigardi. And he's one of the few people that really said, there's a body of knowledge here. Let me break it down Let me
Yeah.
succinctly give people exercises that they can do to go through these layers of tension or armoring in their body, break them down, restore that life or that breath. And in the process, people have pretty dramatic shifts in their personality. They have pretty dramatic shifts in their emotional state, even just in their experience of life. So maybe just explain to us a little bit about kind of what you've taken from Dr. Hyatt and then maybe how you've expanded on it. And then I'd like to talk about some of these layers of tension that we work with in Radical India.
Well, one important point about the way the work was couched and the way he presented, what happened with the lights here? It's getting a little much. The way that he presented it was couched in like occult terminology. So he brought up a lot of stuff about Aleister Crowley and various teachers, some of whom I still enjoy. Gurdjieff I kind of like still. But anyway, keep it about the undoing. It was couched in those terms, which I guess was useful. That's how I discovered it when I was used to be a seeker of that sort. But then toward the end of his life, and you can tell from a lot of interviews and stuff, he was not so much into any of that kind of stuff anymore, and not so much promoting it. And he found that a lot of people, his audience, would read and buy the books and buy the DVDs about the undoing, but would never do it. For the example that the two in-person workshops that I was at with multiple people, I think there was 15 at the first one and 17 at the second one, only like 2 of us had ever done even one exercise out of any of the materials. So people were coming just for the personality, to be near the good doctor, but not necessarily for the purpose the workshop was for. So he ended up focusing on me and another guy who wanted to become trainers of this throughout most of the workshop, and showing us how to conduct sessions and giving us that kind of data. And some of the people even there didn't want to try them, were nervous about trying face stretches, which I don't claim to understand that still, it wasn't that way for me. But so we have the luxury of all these video and all this technology now, so I can have sessions with people remotely on Zoom, and I can correct every single detail or most of the details of what they're doing wrong with the exercises. So you can move a lot faster than you can with just the DVDs alone. If you're super into this stuff, I recommend getting the DVDs, and maybe they have them as download now, I don't know. Getting the DVDs and getting then the Command Z courses, where we present it in a little bit different way. We go deeper with every single exercise that's there in the DVD stuff. And then we've added audio components, interviews, contributions from other people, so from early clients and that kind of stuff. So just on the level of the Radical Undoing core lay down movement system, we've added a lot of material that's both adjunct to the DVDs. You could do without the DVDs, but I think the DVDs are nice if you are into Dr. Hyatt. But if you already have those, or if you've already checked out some of that video, what you're going to find with the Command Z materials is that it's a lot more accessible. And then I took some of the ideas that Dr. Hyatt and I discussed in private about how to conduct the undoing stuff. He basically was just presenting the raw materials for you to work with. I think somewhere on one of the recordings he said something like, "My goal is to get as much of this work out there as I can before I die, and hopefully someone will pick up the banner and run with it." When I first heard that, it was before I had ever talked to him. I knew in an instant, it was like a lightning flash, that I was going to be the one that would do it. But I then had these thoughts like, no, dude, I'm totally broke. Like, I have no chance of fucking doing this. There's no way that it could be me. No, absolutely no way. So I dismissed that knowing. I dismissed that instant knowing. And then so I wasn't like pursuing it. I wasn't running after it. I wasn't begging for it or anything. I just was like listening to the audio, and then I got the DVDs, and then I got in touch with him, and then everything kind of happened from there, dude. But I still, it took years till I kind of accepted that the truth that I found, that I experienced in that one instant. What else did we do? What else have we added? It's not like there's any missing in what he presented, but it was he didn't have the time or whatever to be able to make it more holistic. And by that I mean, one simple example would be, like, I encouraged you to get a guitar, start doing some guitar, or if not that, try doing some singing, or watch a bunch of YouTube videos on how to improve your singing voice, or spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, buy some art classes on the Domestika app, and take some of those art classes. You're going to see your undoing results faster through those other disciplines, for one thing.
Yeah.
Get out into land, go out into nature, take walks, after sessions. And then, like in the intensives program, the 28-day intensives, which is my favorite of everything I put together, I think, you have a morning routine that has warm-ups that are not included in any of the undoing DVDs or anything. There are some decent warm-ups in the books and in the DVDs, but I've studied the body and body-based disciplines now for like 20 years, maybe more. And throughout that, I've discovered things that also work for so-called warm-ups and for daily exercises, and different breathing techniques for different purposes. I've added just some basic martial arts movements, like some kicks from Savat that will allow you to feel the strength of your legs and of your body, and how the force moves from the ground up. So just simple things like that, or like you've seen the handstands. Handstands are an amazing warm-up for this. And the bridge, the wrestler's bridge, and the gymnast bridge, also amazing for getting the spine to be more fluid and strong, the muscles around the spine. Lots and lots and lots of warm-ups, actually. Some stuff I learned from various teachers over the years, some stuff I came up with on my own. You've experienced it. Like when sometimes we do 5-10 minutes of warm-ups, then a lay down session for like 50 minutes. And that can be one experience. Sometimes we do half hour, 35 minutes of warm-ups, and then 30 minutes of session. And it's like mind-blowingly more intense during that 30 minutes, right?
And I've even, on my own, I'll occasionally add even like the bow or the arch, just because of how that stretches my body, even kind of gets those hamstrings open. I do want to go back to a point, and this may be a good segue into some of these layers. So maybe even in the description of this video, I don't know if this will be on YouTube or not, I'm sure we can find a photo for everybody that breaks down these 7 layers of tension, 7 layers of armor, because that's not just a concept. That's a real thing that affects everybody. These 7 layers start with kind of the eyes. They go down to the jaw, the throat, the chest, the solar plexus, the abdomen, and then kind of the pelvis and legs. But if one is blocked or armored in some of these segments, there are real kind of correlations in potentially how one is stuck or free in life, right? It's not just like, oh, this is a concept. Your eyes are armored, big deal, right? No, if your eyes are armored, it's going to affect how you interact and relate with people. It's going to affect your emotional expression. So let's talk about that. And then the one thing I think you're doing differently is my throat's been something I've been working on. You said, go get a guitar, go learn to sing, do something creative. That was not in the initial kind of DVDs. I think that's a great addition that you've added to this work, that once you open the segment up, you've got to take a little bit of action to get the energy or life force to flow. So let's talk about some of these segments. Maybe today we'll start with the eyes, the jaw, and the throat. And then why are we playing guitar afterwards? What does that do? So,
it reminds me of one exercise I put in, I think it was in the earlier intensives, the intensives 1.0, was during the neck, throat, and shoulders week, which was week 2. Everybody had to go out and do karaoke. Not everyone did it, but a lot of people did. I was impressed. But you had to do one song that you would never do, some song that you just think, I would never fucking sing that song, and then one song that you really, really want to sing. Nothing bad ever happened to anyone doing karaoke, during that course. But people who did it, they were almost disappointed that there was not more of an audience after it was done. But ahead of time, they were like, "Oh my God, there's 2 people here. I can't do this," you know.
I mean, I
So the
work with,
simple exercise like that liberates it breaks apart all kinds of assumptions you have about yourself, about other people, about performing. And those are also reinforcing the tension, you know? So, and again, it's not a cognitive action to go out and do karaoke. It's a physical action. And that just happens to be one that'll, in this context, that'll help further along the undoing work. It'll bring this fierce awareness to your whole body when you go up there to do it, or go to a poetry reading, an open mic, whatever it is. Yeah. So about the bands of tension. For some reason, I always have the resistance to cataloging, categorizing, you know, and set. But I know people like that, and it is useful to break it into these bands. Although when I'm giving the sessions to people, we don't really discuss that. You know what I mean? We just do the actual work, and then they have their life experiences and stuff. Maybe it's nerds like you and I who like this kind of stuff, but hopefully some people find it useful enough they want to experience it for themselves, because that's the only point of this work, is to actually experience it. So yeah, I wrote these down the other day and I was looking into them a little more deeply, but it's the upper eyes and face, you know, that's where we start. And that includes these muscles around the eyes, and the muscles that move the eyes different directions, the muscles in the forehead, the eyebrows. So that band is like about seeing reality clearly, which means differentiating between, knowing the difference between what's going on inside the mind versus what's actually happening out here. You know, so like with your dog example from earlier, knowing when you see the dog that if you're freaking out that the dog's actually not trying to do anything to you. It's really not, you know, or knowing if the dog is actually trying to attack you or not. And even if it is trying to attack you, freezing up isn't really going to help you, you know. Getting terrified isn't going to help you either.
right.
So seeing reality more clearly, what are some other examples of that? I almost went into politics, but that's a waste now. So
Can I add one just from my life, just because
yeah,
I
yeah.
really armored in my eyes. I noticed after a while of opening up my eyes, there was an ability to make eye contact with people, and a greater comfort in connection, and a greater comfort just in being present. Because I've had a lot of like dissociative tendencies in my eyes. I never found really a form of body work before this that said open the eyes. Everything says work the legs, work the pelvis,
Uh,
work the shoulders. There's so much in the eyes. And when, at least for me, when they're open, I can be present. I can feel my body. I can connect. I can see. And there's a greater just sense of being able to connect. Yeah, I'm curious to know for you. I mean, after 20 years of this work, what has opening your eyes done for you? Just kind of tying it into your day-to-day life.
oh man, well, I can kind of feel and get a sense of what's going on for other people just by taking a look at them. And now I kind of turn that off to some degree. Like I don't sit at the coffee shop just observing everybody and letting that in, but it's possible now. It's possible to do so. I get a lot of data that just flows in about what's going on for other people, which then makes it really easy to communicate with them, you know. And I live in, for people that don't know, I live in Croatia now. I live in Osijek, Croatia, which is not really a tourist area. And my transition here was pretty smooth, you know, like especially not knowing the language and all that kind of stuff. But I was able to meet and communicate with people. It kind of blew me away how easy it was for me to do so. It was not like it wasn't intense. It's very intense to just leap into a new culture like that. But I'm not as focused on the things people are saying. You know what I mean? I'm not. I do listen, but I'm more focused on the entire. I hate these words, but vibe or whatever. Like the entire energy. Again, these words are real words. They have a reference to something very tangible, but they get lost because of all the seeker stuff, the New Age stuff, become meaningless. But You can get a direct sense of what's going on for other people. Another aspect that's really cool is like this ability to kind of zoom in on different details about the experience. Like you might walk by and notice these flowers that have been growing at your neighbor's yard for years that you never saw before. And when you kind of like go in and zoom in on them, it's like this whole other world is there. Or for example, I'm really into crows, different crows and corvids, and their whole thing, the crow family, and of birds, corvids, whatever, and they're super interactive. Like on this, they're aware that you're aware of them, and they're aware when you're not aware of them, and they're aware of your intentions toward them. You know, there's all kinds of interaction there that I noticed with crows. Also, sometimes and they've landed on me. A few different crows have landed on me and hung out with me for hours. So experiences like that, like just even being present and aware to them, relates to the eyes. Because if you undo the stuff in the eyes and face, you're the mental shit, you know, which is like demons or whatever, this weird tracks of BS in the mind that doesn't have your best interest in mind. That might still be there, but you're not focused on it anymore. It's just not the dominant. It's not dominating your attention and your awareness. So your awareness is actually, you can observe that track, but my awareness then is on the body and on what's going on around the body, and that is fascinating. This world that we're not usually aware of. So there's times I saw, for example, an old lady with really distinct lines in her face, kind of down, looking down and sad. In the main square here, I was walking by one day, and I noticed the track of the mind was just like, oh, there's some old lady. You know, it just puts everybody in a box that's, again, doesn't really contain the truth about that person. But I noticed one day, I was like, wow, I just was looking at her face and I was like, what is her life story? Like, what is she doing right now at this spot in the square? Is she waiting for somebody, or is she remembering, you know, her childhood here? Was she in the war here? Did she go somewhere else? You know, there was just this open-ended curiosity. It wasn't even forming into those questions like that. Those are happening now. But it was just this like, wow, like what a mystery, what a beautiful mystery this person is. Just an old lady, you know, sitting on the square. And then as I looked around, I realized the same for everybody. And for every structure, for the architecture, for the cathedral, you know, you could just look and see like somebody put these bricks up, brick by brick, to make this building, you know. So just sort of a childlike fascination and curiosity about other people, about life, about the buildings, about where you live, you know, about what's actually going on. So when you undo the eyes and face, you're just not focused anymore on the contents of the mind, like the regrets about the past and the obsessions about imagined catastrophes in the future. So now you're reacting, not even reacting, but you're actually responding and navigating through life based on what, like you're actually here. It sounds so funny to say, right? It sounds like nothing, but you're actually here instead of off somewhere else in this made up world, this fictitious world.
It is interesting because to me, like the buzzword mindfulness is like a big thing. Everyone wants to do mindfulness meditation or focus on the breath. Or we even have, at least in America, I don't know about Europe as much, but everyone talks about mental health. We've completely taken the mind and the body and separated them.
Yeah.
We've ignored the body, and we've tried to then use the mind to get back, which the body is really this thing called the unconscious. I mean, all the trapped, I know you don't like this word, but traumas, emotions, these kind of deeply rooted patterns, some call it character structure. It's stuck in these 7 layers of tension, right? And as you open it up, I mean, that's a beautiful example. You opened your eyes, you're in the square, you saw mindfully from a space of presence an old woman, and you got to see her, not your judgments, not your interpretations. You actually got to see her. So that kind of goes to the eyes. We do start with the eyes in Radical Undoing, which I find very unique, because there's a lot of forms of body work that start from the legs and they go up. So we start with the eyes, then we go down to the jaw. Can you just maybe kind of touch briefly on the jaw, maybe even some of the things that you've noticed, and then I can share my experience as well.
The jaw and the mouth. So I don't, the seven bands of tension. I like to break it down in a slightly different way. Maybe that's my hesitation because they break it down into, they being the Bioenergetics Institute or Wilhelm Reich or whoever. There's like upper eyes and face, lower face, then neck and tongue, shoulders, chest, arms, hands, ribs. So the way I would break it up that I like better, and this comes from Hyatt, and he was going to break it into more like 7 different layers, and he ended up doing eyes and face, neck, throat, and shoulders, core, which is from there all the way down. Like the core would include the legs, kind of, but all the way down to the bottom of the pelvis. Let's say for core, from like the neck down to there, the upper lower neck. And then the lower body, which is then the pelvis and the hips, pelvis, lower belly. So each area is overlapping, and that's on purpose because there's no real separation between those layers. But to discuss them, though, so I like to put in those 4 instead. Eyes and face. Even though the jaw is a big deal, the jaw tension is a huge deal. Usually we'd end up working the shoulders and the upper face before we work the jaw and tongue, because it'll tense up even more if you start working it too soon. So you need to have kind of space around it. But so if we say neck, throat, and shoulders, and even include some of the jaw in that, in the tongue, that relates to expressing yourself. So you have the words like pain in the neck, and that's when there's somebody, when someone's talking about someone else, which I don't ever recommend, but when you're around that gossiping going on, you're saying things that you're afraid to or unable to say in front of that person for whatever reason, fear of losing a job or social consequences from expressing yourself clearly. So when you start to undo the throat and the jaw and everything, that stuff will start to come out. Now, why I recommended you learn to sing or make at least sounds with your voice or do guitar and all this kind of stuff is because then you can start expressing that in a creative way rather than just being subject to it, like when the dam bursts, and then start having outbursts and stuff. So this relates to why do we undo the upper face or the eyes and stuff first? Because then you're going to see clearly, I shouldn't actually like go attack this person and scream at them if you start undoing this, right? So you start undoing the throat and then all this stuff that you never said before to other people might start coming out and you won't be holding back. You won't be able to control it, For me, that happened. There was this guy I like to call my arch nemesis, and he sometimes tunes into these when I do live streams. He was in Southern California, and it's such a beautiful life, man. I've since reconnected with, not as much with him, but with the woman who I was with at that time. But we had such a contentious relationship, and this guy was like just manipulating and prodding that thing all the time, and me, and at one point, I was doing tons of undoing then, and I was doing this innate power response. It's one of the Hyatt type sessions that is really interesting. Specific sequence of movements, and I was just pissed at that guy. And I saw him at at this small farm to table cafe in a place called Miners Oaks. I don't remember the name of the cafe. It was such a great place. And he sat at a table, and I walked over and just slammed my fists on the table. He was with some date, and I was like, "Hey, dude, stay the fuck away from my girlfriend, all right? Stay the fuck away from me and from her." And he just got like all timid, and he's playing, he knows all these social manipulations, so he was trying to tone me down a little bit, and I didn't attack him, but you know what I mean? I didn't stop myself. Whereas prior to undoing these specific areas, I would have like choked back or sent him a message or held back on that, And then what's funny, I started to undo everything more. And as that situation and that way of life and that relationship started to dissolve, I started to see clearly that it didn't matter what he or anybody else was doing. What mattered was me and this woman and how we were conducting ourselves. And it was just a mess how I was behaving. And at some point I became so grateful for him, his presence, his prodding and all this stuff. And I started to undo the chest and arms and a lot more deeply. In fact, that's when I recorded the core undoing course, was just prior to that, me leaving that entire situation and leaving Southern California. And I saw him. I went to town. It was all these bizarre events will happen with the undoing too. You're going to run into all the so-called enemies in your life. Everything that you're hiding from is going to start to like be revealed in these very interesting and sort of surprising ways. You got to be ready for that. And it's fun to navigate. It's really intense, but fun. So after all this, slamming my hands and scaring the guy, intimidating him or whatever, I start to see it all more clearly. It starts like, oh man, this is all my own creation here, and what am I doing? And I see him in the park in Ojai at this beautiful park, and I just started walking over to him pretty fast because I knew that I was about to leave the whole situation, leave the town. And I saw him standing over there, and he started to back away like I was going to run up and punch him. And I was like, no, dude, it's okay. I'm coming to give you a hug, man. It's fine. And then I walked up and gave him this huge hug. I don't remember that we even exchanged any words, but I could feel like this, because I always had a deep connection with that guy, which is why he was able to manipulate me. I was hiding things from myself, from my girlfriend, from everybody. And yeah, so all that kind of became exposed. And then like I said, I was working more of the punches and the chest work and the expression work. So then I was expressing everything, good, bad, and ugly. But that's where you want to be. You want to be in life, Those are beautiful experiences. I would never trade that shit away, man. Going up to the table and smashing my fist down, that was great. Seeing things more clearly, giving that same guy a huge hug was great. Being in the crazy fucking madness of that relationship was great. And now, 10 years, almost 10 years later, reconnecting with the woman who I was in the relationship with, and both being able to see like so clearly now and having forgiven everything. And I attribute that to the undoing work, and to my other teachers and learnings that I've added to it. But you're going to find stuff you add on your own too. I've described this before, like Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. This is super useful because as you learn and do the undoing exercises and break apart these tensions, you're going to find things that in your life will drop away. So maybe practices that are full of shit or that aren't good for you are going to drop away. But then things that are really good for you, you're going to fall into your life, or you'll be organically attracted to them. So maybe for me, it's been different types of body practices, different types of martial arts, biking, walking, guitar playing, singing, different types of art, and then RPG, gaming, hosting and playing games and that kind of stuff too. And for you, it might be different. So Bruce, related to Bruce Lee, because with Jeet Kune Do, he would teach students that, and then he said, now go out and find things to make this better, find things to add to this. So when you do it, then you'll find things that you'll add to it. It becomes about your life. It's not about Dr. Hyatt's or Wilhelm Reich's or Alexander Lowen's or Garrett's radical undoing. It's about undoing the tensions that are in your body and then becoming, as Hyatt would say, becoming who you really are, becoming in alignment with who and what you really are. Now, my hypothesis or my stance on that is that there is a God, and then that God basically installed us, created us with gifts to share with other people in the world, which essentially bring them back to an awareness of Him, awareness of God, which would be the most sort of joyous thing, to fall into line with what you were created to do. I'm not even talking about find your purpose or any of this kind of stuff, not anything that's on the head level, but on the level of living this beautiful life. And the only answer I have for why undo the tensions, why should you become in alignment with who and what you really are, if it's just a materialist or a physical world with nothing afterward, then it's kind of meaningless. Well, then I would say just pursue pleasure. There's no other reason to do this than besides it's pleasurable. But it's brought me from essentially an atheist standpoint where I started all the way around to this basically Christian standpoint. And I'm not going to get into all the details of that here, but if I'm going to answer honestly why I do this work, is because it will bring you back into alignment with who and what you really are, and removes the layers between you and your experience of that creator, of why the hell are we here otherwise, you know. And then you'll be able to share your gifts, and then so becoming the light of the world, like you'll become in alignment with those, and it makes your life a completely different thing than what you thought it was. You're not going to try to live up to bosses and teachers and live up to your own ideas about yourself. You'll stop judging other people. You'll see them clearly. You'll be able to discern what's going on. Like you won't necessarily let a pedophile hang out with your kid. You know, you'll maybe even use force to remove that person from a situation, but still not judging. You know what I mean? Not condemning in your own mind, not playing God. So you become aware of who and what you are and your place in this existence, in this creation, so to speak. Bringing it to a high level there, you know, but it's like that to me is the deepest level of relaxation, and is this faith that starts to dawn on you, to Garrett dawn on you, you know. The faith that you start to become aware of as you break apart all the assumptions and the things you think you know, the things you've been taught, a lot of which are demonstrably lies, and to maintain those lies in the face of your direct experience of the truth of existence causes tension. So then naturally, as you break apart that tension, get yourself breathing naturally like you were created to breathe, then your awareness of that creator is just going to start to happen. If there's a God, then your awareness of it will then be enhanced, let's say. It's not enhanced, it's because it's already there. There's nothing, it's more that we're removing the layers of interpretation. So to use that Christian paradigm, like you might say the mind, the world of the mind, and the world of abstractions and concepts is like ruled by Satan or by demonic influences. Demonic influence would just be like, as Derek Prince said, a spirit without a body, you know, a person without a body that's having an influence over you. So the voices in your head telling you to go do stuff that you know you don't want to do. So if you're lost completely in the head, and in this nihilistic or materialist or scientism worldview, you have no reason to really there's no reason to actually improve yourself or to undo yourself or to undo those tensions, you know. Except for that, it will bring you back into alignment, and often people then do find a sense of connection with the creator. So that's kind of fascinating to me. I didn't expect it to lead there. But so many long-term clients from way back in 2010 and even a little before have, they in and out of touch with me, but a lot of them ended up finding Christ, so to speak, or finding faith in Creator. I don't know the exact correlation, but it's, go ahead.
I said, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. Yeah.
I just want to touch on a couple points you made, because you made so many good ones. I mean, that was really good. I'm glad we're recording it. Because sometimes I'll say, or you'll say brilliant stuff, and the camera's not on, you know, and it's like, go back and record that. I do want
to. Then it's all funky when you try to recreate that moment, you know.
So it doesn't come out as good the second time. I do want to come back to this jaw and the face. I know I'm really harping on these 7 layers.
It's fine.
Yeah. But so a couple things, you know, we do these face stretching exercises. We work the throat, we work the jaw, and you said something. You said, "Well, I got fucking angry and I slammed my hands down." What I see as kind of like spirituality today, in some ways, it kind of negates. We lost you. There we go.
Toning it down. There we go.
It kind of negates the human experience, and it does seem like what it means to be human, right? Is you can get angry, which that's something I think as you undo, you go, oh, growing up, I got angry, or I tried to get angry, and the people that were raising me shut it down. So then I shut it down, right? And then it's like you have to learn to undo that, or you have to realize there were times that you wanted to speak up and you shut it down, and then all these little muscles contracted and you shoved it into your body. So I have noticed that, and I'm sure a lot of your students, as these areas start to open up, everything you held back, everything you didn't want to say, a lot of things you didn't want to express or you didn't want to feel, they start to come out. And that includes anger. Hope I didn't lose you. Give it a sec. I think you froze. Hey, Garrett, did I lose you? Well, if I'm still on here, I guess I'll keep going for him to get on, but that includes anger, that includes sadness. It's all these things that we kind of shoved into our body, into the segments. The other thing I've noticed is with these face stretching exercises, um, and Garrett's done a lot of this in regards to kind of talking about the mask that we wear. As these tensions around the face start to soften, then the mask that we present the world starts to go away. So I always say, I remember I'd walk around my community, and I noticed I'd have this really like fake smile, and it wasn't real. It was coming from people pleasing. It was coming from probably trying to get love and approval. And after doing the facial exercises for a couple months, I noticed, oh, I can just relax. And then if they like me, great. If they don't like me, great. I can show up more as who I am. So I think those are things just for those of you watching. Um, as these things start to soften, the facade, the mask starts to come off. And I remember years ago in college, I was dating this girl, and we went on a couple dates, and I think I was more into her than she was to me. But I was walking her to class one day, and she looks at me and she goes, "I just don't feel like you're real with me. I feel like you have a mask." And of course, I got offended, and I was like, "No, you're wrong." And then I realized, no, in a lot of ways, she was right. I did have a mask. So I was just carrying it on about the face exercises, the jaw, about kind of how we carry this mask or a fake smile. And, as we undo, all of this stuff needs to go, right? We need to be able to be relaxed. We also need to be able to cry. We need to be able to be angry. Like there needs to be that full expression. And then tying that in, Garrett, to what you talked about with a higher power or God, um, and we don't have to call it anything, but there is, in my experience, as these contractions undo themselves, you can tangibly feel more of a connection with whatever that is that we can't see. It can be quietness, silence, God, stillness, Christ, Buddha, whatever you want to call it. There seems to be a greater experience in the body, and it
Yeah.
seems like these tensions or these traumas or these emotions are the veil for that experience. So great stuff, man. Great points. I love how we kind of broke down the eyes, the jaw, and how we'll probably in subsequent videos go through some of the layers. I think it's great to give context for people. Um, but some of the things that they can experience, and you know what? It's okay to slam your fucking fists and get angry. It's okay to be human, and we're breaking down all the things that we think we have to be. And on the other side of that, we become who we are. It's not like you're not giving us fucking potion to take, or we're not adding anything. It's
That's a key point, though. Yeah, we're not adding something to you. Where most systems and most seeking is to try to, first of all, is to try to make yourself okay. That's at least what mine was. I didn't even know that's what I was seeking, but I was trying to make myself okay.
Mhm.
And then from there, I realized, like with the undoing, I realized, well, it's not possible to be any more okay than I already am, even if I think I'm not okay. So then suddenly this quest stopped. It just stopped completely. Now then people think, well, what does that mean? I'm never going to try anything new again? No, 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 that's not it at all. But this internal yearning to become okay and thinking that something outside of me is going to make me okay, that stopped. And then from there, it just became like, wow, okay, what do I actually want to do? Like, let's go do some guitar or singing or whatever else. and learn more about what's really going on, and then become, once your mind is grounded in the body, once you're present again, then you can get into some cool stuff like epistemology, or how do you know what you think you know? Do you really know it? And that's kind of fascinating, where that sort of bizarre, but in a certain sense, that also leads to an awareness of the creator. Because there's very deep logical issues with nihilism and scientism and all this kind of stuff, you know. But you have to be grounded enough in the reality of your direct experience to even know what is bullshit and what's not, to be able to call out your own mental bullshit,
Yeah.
you know.
I do want to kind of end and wrap this up. One of the things I really liked, I started off with the Hyatt DVDs, and then I reached out to you, and I was like, oh my God, there's someone doing this work. It was amazing. Like, you're kind of it, really, that is kind of taking this work and run with it. Um, and it's been a huge piece for me, and I'm excited to keep on doing. But one of the things that I really respect about you is you're not really holding anything up, and that's been something for me that I've really had to work through. And this work has been such a big key in that, is just being able to fucking show up, and I don't have to have this fake smile on or be anything. Like, that's something that, at least my experience of you, is you just show up, you're just yourself, you just relax. You're not trying to be a teacher or a guru or have it all right. You just show up as yourself. I love that, man. I really respect that about you. And that really has been pointing back to me. Just show up and be Jonah. And they like
Yeah.
you, great. They hate you, great.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of
But
interesting. You can just be curious. If they like you, kind of be curious about that, and if they don't like you, be curious, equally curious. Huh? What's
right,
going on with that guy? Yeah,
right,
But nothing's really personal. Like, we don't even know ourselves, and other people don't really know us. There's just these experiences, and they're fucking rich and kind of glorious, man. It's
mm,
it's actually amazing just to be alive,
yeah,
to even have an existence at all, and then from there to be able to explore it and navigate it and flow through it, and then the deeper level of that faith, knowing that you're kind of being taken care of. It's kind of fascinating. But
yeah.
yeah,
So I think this was great. Next
yeah,
time
it's a
we're
lot of
going
fun.
to dive into the chest, that diaphragm that you talked about, because there's a lot in the diaphragm, maybe a little bit of the belly, and we'll just kind of take people through the body and um, add some more context to this work. But yeah, it's a beautiful body of knowledge, and I think this is something that humanity needs. We don't need more techniques or add this belief system or learn to think this way. It's like, no, break up the armoring, open yourself up, and then you become kinder, and I think you become more present and a greater addition to society, as opposed to just looping your patterns or your generational stuff that you're holding on to. So,
Yeah, yeah. Amen to that, man. Yeah, so we'll talk again.
yeah,
I think we said on Tuesday, but yeah, I'll probably be doing some streams between now and then. And also, for people that are watching or listening, there's going to be times we will have we'll post the link, and then other people can come on. And if you had a specific thing going on, like what, I don't know what, but whatever issue in your life, if you're willing to come on and be on camera, then we can actually do some exercises. Just even create right on the fly, right in the moment, create a small sequence of 1 or 2 or 3 exercises that person can do right there live on the stream, and experience it for themselves. And then, like we've talked about, we'll have the Summerland Academy of Radical Undoing, all the old courses, lots of new stuff in the works. So even an app, if I ever figure out how to use it, but all kinds of cool stuff like that coming out soon. So
and then I do want to add one more thing, because I'm sure
mhm.
people, I mean, some people like DVDs or classes, right? Other people want kind of a one-on-one experience. So, you posted on YouTube. You've got 2 providers that kind of are doing sessions, and I don't know if you're doing one-on-ones, but like, if someone wanted to reach out and try this stuff and kind of get that personalized attention, what are the next steps for them?
Well, the main thing is you should subscribe to the email list, and I just posted the radicalundoing.com website. So go there and sign up on that. And we're going to be changing some stuff around on there real soon as well. But for now, you still do get a decent sequence of exercises and experiences. The other thing would be to write to me directly, Garrett at radicalundoing.com or radicalundoing@gmail, either way. Or on Facebook, also fine. YouTube, also fine. Get in touch with me, and then we kind of have a specific sequence of how you can begin going through this stuff. And I usually like to talk to people first on Zoom. Eventually, I'm going to not be doing that once we get the whole university thing going. I'll be focused more on one-to-many, like with these streams and everything. But for now, yeah, people can still get on my schedule. And then, like we said before, if you're in the St. Petersburg, Florida area, you get in touch with Tyler. That's Tyler at radicalundoing.com. And then if you're in or around Edmonton, Alberta, there's Mark at radicalundoing.com.
And then can they work virtually with people as well?
I have them as teacher training guys, and I haven't cleared them to do virtual yet. I think they both would be fine at it, but what I'd like for them to do first is get a lot more hands-on experience. It's one thing to be able to give sessions online and kind of, I think they have the confidence to do it. The issue there is, like, before I ever gave sessions online, I had given no less than, I'd say, and this, I don't know if people even believe me, but I was giving sessions to even strangers I met at the grocery store in Eugene, Oregon. But it was like probably 100 or more sessions I had given or been around or shared with people with many, many different body types, different people, different structures, different issues going on in life. And then I worked with some people over time with a lot of hands-on and some people with not so much hands-on, to the point where I kind of know the basic mistakes that you could be making with any one of the specific exercises. Mm-hmm. So I could even give a session at this point just on audio. And if I could just hear the way they're doing the out-breath, I can usually correct things about what they're doing. And I know how like, for example, if most people let the feet get too wide and then the knees start to do certain things. So I know that from direct experience. So that's why I hesitate to say they should do online sessions quite yet. Even though it would probably be fine, but it's just best to get a lot of in-person experience first.
Cool. This is great, man. Well, I hope people, the audience, you all got some gems from this, and this is a really, really beautiful body of knowledge, and I think it takes time. It's not like you do one session, your whole life's changed, but we didn't get these patterns in one day. We're not going to undo them in one day, but as you undo them, like you said earlier so beautifully, you find out who you are, or you find out more of who you are. So
yeah, you start to uncover that, to remember that in a certain sense. Because when you're a little kid, you knew all this, unless you were fucked up in the womb, which can happen too. But generally, when you're a little kid, and you're living in this grace, this kind of state of grace and curiosity and wonder, and then that gets layered over, and then we climb into the mind, and so now this is a way you can come back out of that, and back to that joy and that glee and that wonder and curiosity. But yeah, and folks that are listening, type in questions, type in comments and questions. Make sure you subscribe on the YouTube. That helps us out. And then type in comments and questions, and then on future streams, we'll deal with those. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to figure out, kind of a regular pattern of doing the streams, and then folks can come on. So if you're excited to jump on too, be ready for that, and then we'll paste the link in, and then you can come on. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man. Have fun. Talk to you later.